Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, 3 Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading 3 Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
Hello, everyone. I am so thrilled to have as my guest today the amazing Dr. Amy Johnson. Amy Johnson is a psychologist, coach, author, and speaker who shares a groundbreaking new approach that helps people find true, lasting freedom from unwanted habits via insight rather than willpower. She is the author of Being Human and the Little Book of Big Change, the no willpower approach to breaking any habit. In 2017, she opened the Little School of Big Change, an online school that has helped hundreds of people find freedom from anxiety and habits and live a more peaceful life. Amy has been a regularly featured expert on The Steve Harvey Show and Oprah.com, as well as the Wall Street Journal and Self Magazine. Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Del. Thanks so much for having me.
I know. I feel like I've seen a lot of you lately.
I know. It's been
great.
Cool.
It's been really great. So, you are the expert in the field of habits. So, first of all, I want to say I loved your book, The Little Book of Big Change. It's one of the very first books I ever read on the principles, and it was just so impactful that I have stacks in my office that I give to my clients because I think it's such a beautiful, gentle approach that you have with people that have already spent years beating themselves up about the habits they have. So tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I love that you say that about the book, and pick that out, because those are the people that I most love, just because I was one for so long, who my heart goes out to, is those people who have just worked so hard and tried everything, and all along the way, it's like their hope and their energy and their sense of any kind of ability, their own empowerment, all of that just kind of falls apart with every failed attempt. Yeah. And that was me for a very long time, which is why I love working with those people now. So I just always was such a worker bee and still am in a lot of ways, unfortunately, but so much less than I used to be. But everything had to be perfect, and I knew how things should go. And it was all just me trying to do what I thought was going to make me happy. But it led into a lot of anxiety, a lot of perfectionism, eating disorder, all kinds of stuff like that. And then, of course, that stuff is not okay to have. It looked horrible. What's wrong with me that I feel anxiety? Now, even just to say that sounds kind of crazy. Like, nothing's wrong with you if you feel anxiety. It means you're human, but It's not how it looked for a long time. And, it's not how it looks for a lot of people. So it was like, what's wrong with me that I'm feeling this? Like, me. What's wrong with me that I ate that, or that I look this way, or I did this thing? And, that just piles on, all the attempts to fix this thing that now looks like it's wrong with you. So when I came across this understanding about 8 or 9 years ago, it was just gigantic. And it's funny because it wasn't, I had been a spiritual seeker, and in many ways, some of this wasn't brand new. It was familiar, but there was something different about these principles and this understanding that we share that I hadn't heard before. And I think it was the piece that no matter what's going on, we're okay. And it gives a context for why we don't feel okay, why we're feeling hopeless or doing all these things. It's like, oh, my thinking created that, but that's not me. And there was just something huge in that just helped me, changed my life. And so I just started sharing it all over the place.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's exactly what it felt to me too. I mean, all my thoughts were just personal to me. Nobody else had the thinking I had. When I realized that, no, it's up for grabs for anybody. These are just random thoughts that run through all of us. And some, talk to that about how some keep repeating for some of us. Because you talk a lot about the brain science too, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, I love thinking of our brain as a machine, because it is. and there's something about seeing, oh, we're, almost 8 billion people on this planet that all have a machine in our heads that works the same way. Everybody's machine, for the most part, works the same way and operates by the same rules. Now, what our machine, like what my machine talks about and what your machine talks about may be different. What our machines talk about at different phases in our lives and all that may be different conversation. And it's so funny because that's where we look, like to your point, like, oh, I'm the only one and these are my thoughts. We're just so hooked into the story and the content and the part that's about us that we just stay there. But what's so cool is seeing, oh no, when we just back up a tiny bit, we can see that it's just these machines that are telling stories. We don't even need to get into what are the stories. We certainly don't have to take that so seriously. And that just opens up so much. It's like, oh, I'm a normal functioning human being with stories playing in my head. Okay. Like that's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also, for me, it just really helps with that sort of aspect of shame. Like, it's that part that was, for me, was just very much like, there's something wrong with me. They're trying to fix it and things like that, but also that it was just unique to me. I mean, when you normalize it and just say, no, this is just what human beings go through, you're like, really? I'm not the only one? So I just love that. So I have a question for you. And I love that you do this, but I am curious about it. In your book, you deal with a lot of areas that some people in the mental health profession have described as addictions. And you don't use the word addictions, you use the word habit, which I think is much softer and more gentle. But can you speak to that? Maybe if a client comes to you and says, no, you don't get it, it's not a habit, it's an addiction, like making it more solid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to be honest, the only reason I stay away from that word, the biggest reason is what you just pointed toward, is that addiction just feels so heavy. It feels, we have it so associated with, something chemical and biological and physical and hereditary and out of our control and all of that, which, yes, our habits, addictions, whatever, they do have a lot of those components. Sometimes they are hereditary. Sometimes often they're very physical and there's brain chemistry involved in all of that. But I think by just looking at the habitual piece, what it comes down to is that our machinery has habits. Like our brain has habits. It talks about the same things. It gives us the same urges and cravings and feelings and all of that just habitually, because that's what its job is. Our brain's job is to be very efficient and consistent and habit oriented to keep us alive. So again, like you said, it starts, like when we can start to see it that way, it takes out the I'm an alcoholic, I have this, my family history is, it takes the whole me, the whole personal, the whole shamey piece of it out of it for a second. And it's like, no, you're a human being. Your body and brain work just like everyone else's. And here's what your body and brain are in the habit of giving you. And then we get to be in a place where like, oh, like you said, it's so huge. It's not personal. It's not just me. It's not about me. And now I can deal with it in a sense, or have some room to see what my body and brain are giving me, what my psychology is doing, in a totally different way, where we can get some insight around it. But when we're sitting in the middle of it and it looks like it's all about us and what a loser we are, or it's just inevitable because our grandma had this and then our mom had it, then we just don't have much room to see much.
Exactly. It's just piling on. And the other thing that I love is that, talk about the iceberg, about we're often trying to sort of attack from the top, whatever the habit is. I love that. And you have fabulous metaphors. So that one is one of my favorites, around breaking habits, or rather having a different relationship with a habit.
Yeah, well, it's so tied in with exactly what we're talking about, because again, when everything looks like it's about us, and it does. I mean, even with what we know, what we've seen, it still does, right? You have a thought, you have a feeling, like it's just how we work, that it looks personal, like it's about us. But when that's all we've ever seen, when it looks like we're feeling and thinking and doing the things we're feeling, thinking and doing because of the kind of person we are, and that it's all and heavy and shamey and all of that. All we can see to do, we're right in the middle of it. It's like, all we can see to do is like, that thing has to change. If this thing changes, then I get to feel better, is basically what we all say in some, in our own words. If this thing changes, then I can be okay, or then I can feel better. So what do? Of course, we go to work trying to change that thing. We eat differently, try to think differently, try to feel differently in all kinds of crazy ways, try to make our behavior look different. We just get in and try to manipulate all of that. But we're in the middle of this big, confusing psychological mess, trying to change it from in the middle of that big psychological mess. So that's kind of us going to the top of this iceberg. Now, an iceberg, you see maybe 10%, 90% is hidden, but all we see is the part we see. So, and we don't know that there's more to it than that. It just looks like it looks. So we're, like I was trying to have the right affirmations and mindsets and eating plans and all of this stuff. And it's a little hopeful at first because we think it's going to work potentially. And, so sometimes it does kind of make us feel a little bit better. But again, it's literally like trying to move an iceberg by starting at the top and chipping your way down. And it just isn't going to work. You're going to run out of energy. You're going to run out of willpower and strength at some point. And so like, that's the huge gift that we get by starting to see a little bit about it. It just backs us off of that iceberg. And it's like, hey, you don't have to just beat yourself into submission this way. There's something else you can see. And then we start to see the whole bigger picture of things.
Yeah. And I loved in your book, you talk about, it's almost like sort of warming the waters, and it's, with the understanding it sort of gently melts the iceberg from the bottom up, as opposed to us sort of attacking it from the top.
Yeah.
And the other thing also that were also comforting to me reading this was like that what propels us to do a habit repetitively is to seek what's, comfort, which is actually our natural, innate well-being. So can you talk a bit about that? Because I think I found with people when you sort of say it's actually something that's good, it might have got out of control. It helps them let go of it, because again, it's that sort of, I'm bad, I'm so bad, I shouldn't be doing this. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really shocking sometimes for people to hear, like our habits, addictions, all of that, everything we get caught up in. It's all showing us, it's all pointing us back to the health that we are. So what I mean by that is we are so made of health, and our default nature is one of just peace, not like amazing happiness and excitement and any of that kind of stuff, but just peace, just contentment. That's our nature. So as we start to stray away from that, as we do, alarm bells go off. Like, we're not okay with that. And that's awesome, because it's our nature, it's home base. And so when we start to stray away from that, now it's healthy and normal and okay to stray away from that a little bit. But there's also this whole kind of, our whole design wakes us up to the fact that we're straying away from that. And we have all this feedback kind of built into how we're designed that show us. And so you start to stray away. Let's say you just are really stressed out, living in your head, and have all these ideas for how life should look. Well, as you take those more and more seriously, you feel worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. Now, most of us, again, we just feel worse and worse, and we think, oh, it's because life's not going right. So we go out in life and just try to make it better, thinking that's going to help. And of course, that just takes us more into feeling worse for the most part. Mm-hmm. But what happens as we're feeling worse and worse is that's not okay. Like, deep within us, we know that's not home. We know that's not who we are. We know that better is possible. So in our attempt to get ourselves back home, now, not on purpose or consciously, but somewhere in us, we just know that we want to get back home, that there's a home to get to. Mm-hmm. We just start adding things. We do things and looking for a feeling that's closer to home.
Yeah.
So we look for it in other people, we look for it in things in the world, we look for it in substances and all kinds of stuff. And as soon as something kind of takes the edge off and helps us feel a tiny bit better, and really only because it's distracting us from our own painful thinking, we think that's it. You know, it was that man, that relationship, or that substance, that drug, whatever. And then we get caught up. But you can see how it's so well-meaning. It's just a misunderstanding.
Yeah, I just love that, because I think so many people come into this just, seeing it as their weakness. There's the part that's broken in them. But when you suggest that, it's like people just start opening up to, they don't defend it so hardly.
Yeah.
So another topic that is coming up, I'm noticing in conversation with you, at the weekend we had this amazing reset, refresh weekend. And you talked a lot about memory. So what is the past, and can you describe that a little bit too? What I mean, do you know what I'm saying here around that sort of bringing the past into the present?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, in the context of habits, habits are all memory. Like, how do you, this is just a fascinating question, like, without a memory, would you have a habit? I mean, but like I don't know what the dictionary definition is of a habit, but it's something that, you've done in the past, right? Exactly. The past is pretty much built into it. Yeah. That's what makes it a habit. Now, without a memory, like let's say we just woke up with amnesia, without us having a memory, would our brain and body still do things habitually? Sure. But I think we'd be in a place where we would still be just more moment to moment, even with things that are occurring habitually. Because if our mind, our conceptual mind can't grab onto it and say, oh, this is back. Yeah, this is me. This is what I do. This is my habit. If you can't do that, then sure, things blip up and we feel them or do them or whatever, and then they wash away because that's our nature. It's kind of what you see like with kids. Sometimes little kids get little habits, like they'll bite their nails or do little nervous things, but they don't have this big, heavy story around it. Like, this is my thing and I need to break it.
Yeah.
So they do have little habits for periods of time, but often they kind of just fall away. So the whole question of memory and, what we know about ourselves and what we carry through time and all that is really interesting, especially for habits, I think. I mean, for anything, but.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think innocently, that's my other favorite 3 principles word, is innocently. It's like, oh, if it's innocent, then I don't have to blame myself. But, I'm just thinking of that small child that is given the comfort blanket, and there's so much put into that blanket is bringing you comfort. Have you got your blankie? Or, and it's almost like, it's like our parents are innocently, supporting that the comfort is coming from outside you. Yeah. So it's not surprising. There should be a scientific study on that. How many people had one of those comfy blankets and reached out to substances and things that bring them comfort? That would be fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, it's interesting, too, just as parents, even when we know how this works a little bit, I've seen this myself, that we still stereotype our kids and turn them, there's still like the kid that has this temperament and you do that thing. And it's so like, I catch myself doing it sometimes, like, oh, don't say that. Yeah. But it's just how our mind works. It's just what we see and we put that on them.
I know. And it's so funny. I remember my mother used to, again, innocently would say to me, you're driving me crazy. So you hear that enough and you think, God, I'm really powerful. I can really affect all these people around me. And in turn, they're affecting me. So we just support that. So share some, I know you work with so many people and you have this amazing little School of Big Change, which I am proudly a member of. But tell me about because I even notice on the calls sometimes, I mean, I just have to give it to you. You are amazing. I mean, there are some pretty challenging situations that come up that you are so incredibly sensitive to and able to deal with in the moment when it seems like somebody's life is just falling apart. So can you talk to that a bit about somebody that really comes in where they're just like, but you don't get it. I have no money. I'm addicted. I've, just broken up. Or how do you maintain what you do with working with people like that?
Yeah. It's, thank you for saying that. And I don't think it was always like this. And really the only thing that's shifted and what I'm guessing has made it easier for me and helped me be able to do that more is that, like, the way I see them is really deeply shifted, the way I see anyone. So when someone has that, of course, I feel horrible for them and I understand what they're feeling and going through, but it's kind of like that iceberg thing. With compassion, I see that everything they're really caught up in is the tip of the iceberg. It's not who they are. It's not what their future holds. They're not seeing their life clearly. They're seeing a bunch of really busy, scared thinking, and me too, all the time, right? So we can be compassionate and connect with someone on that level, but I'm never anymore thrown by that stuff. And I think that's what makes it possible. I think that's what makes all of us just sort of good friends or coaches or whatever we do. It's like we really deeply see the health and resilience and okayness in people, and they feel that. So from that place, I think you just come at it a different way. I don't know if that makes sense or if it's kind of vague if people aren't coaches, but it's really about like just knowing we're all the same. Like you said earlier, people feel shame about what they're doing or embarrassment or everything looks personal. Yeah, that's the human condition, but it's also the human condition that stuff's not true. That's habitual thinking, that our minds are just habituated to think about ourselves and think everything revolves around us, and it isn't. So when someone's like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed to tell you this, but I fell off the wagon. I did this. I ate that yesterday. I said this to my kids. Like, I never, ever, ever look at them and think, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. And I used to. It's like, it's just this understanding is like, oh yeah, that's what people do sometimes when they're caught up. It never looks personal. And that's so helpful.
No, exactly. I love that. And I think when somebody does feel that much despair and in that darkness, just having somebody opposite them that just, it's almost like, I don't know, it's comforting to see that the person that you're opposite isn't shocked or isn't thinking that you've failed, or but you can truly see the innate health that's still in them, underneath all this, and well-being underneath all of this thought storm that's going through right now. So that is beautiful. So I know, what have you got anything else coming up? I know we just had that fabulous weekend which I mentioned. Are there any other things coming up that you're doing?
I have a couple little workshops. I have one in the Midwest in Ohio coming up in August. And then the Little School of Big Change opens again in September, which is always a big thing because it opens twice a year for people to go through. And then I actually in January, I'm starting a coach training certification program that helps people specifically with kind of helping people through their change. So people who want to coach people with habits and anxiety, kind of from the Little Book of Big Change methodology, if you want to call it that, but really, supporting people to coach people with those issues.
Yeah, well, that's fabulous. I looked it up. It looks very, very interesting. You have quite a few other co-facilitators working with you on
yes.
that. That sounds really great. So for somebody out there that is, I have somebody in particular I have in mind right now that is, I gave them your book, but is just really, really, really doesn't want to join your school, say, or anything else like that, really feeling like nothing else has worked so far. How would you just even begin to have them start opening up to there is another possibility?
Yeah, I think, are you so you're in conversation with this person?
There's somebody I know and they have an issue with alcohol, and it's affecting their life very badly. Yeah. And I'm just wondering if there's just one, where to start again. I thought your book was a fabulous opening to that, but there's still a hanging on to, I am broken, there's something seriously wrong with me and has been since birth.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because like even just the way you say it is like they're just holding on to that.
Yeah.
It truly, I mean, you and I and a lot of your listeners probably know it truly is just a thought that they're holding on to.
Yeah.
It really is. So and it's interesting, like even as we just look at it now, like if they just didn't hold on to that one thought, if they were just open to the fact that maybe I'm okay, and my psychology is huge and it tells me to drink all the time and it tells me my life is a mess, and yes, psychology is huge, and many times it's all we see. It's like we're in fog and all we see is what our mind is telling us. But the challenge, I think, for all of us, anytime we want to help someone or ourselves, is like, how do we see around what we see?
Yeah.
Like how do we get them to just be open? And so I don't know. I mean, I totally trust that any little ins that any of us see to help someone or to start that conversation are planting seeds that are likely to be helpful. But I love kind of starting with like, just what if you're wrong? And sometimes that's really impactful for someone who feels like their life is a mess, because there's a big disconnect in the logic there. People will tell me all the time, like, I can't do anything right. My life's a mess. I've messed it all up, but I'm absolutely right that I'm broken. I know that's a fact. It's like, well, wait a minute. You're telling me that you're a mess. You don't know anything. Maybe you're wrong about that little piece too, So it's like that what if question sometimes is just opens the door enough, what if what I'm saying has legs, and what if the way you're seeing it just isn't quite right? Pretty much everyone at some point has to kind of entertain that. Yeah. And that, that's a door in a lot.
I love that. That's a great place to end, actually, because we are coming to a close here. But it is that what if has helped me so much in my life. It just, even if like, what if, memory didn't happen, and we talked about it last night. What if we all had amnesia and every moment we were fresh in the present moment? Nothing to compare it to, nothing to judge. It just opens up so much possibility, which I love. So thank you for that. I will definitely encourage my friend to watch the show, and I think she'll get something from it. So thank you so much for coming on. I know how busy you are, but I really, really appreciate it, and I know my listeners do too. So
thank you, Del. It was great talking with you.
And you too. Okay, take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.